Thank you so much. I was putting out a little too much Holy Spirit. I didn't keep enough water for myself. I'd like to start out by thanking you so much for having me today. You have an absolutely gorgeous sanctuary. It is stunning just to stand in here. And I say that as somebody who grew up in the church, literally. My father was a campus pastor, and you better believe every Sunday, I don't care if it was an elementary school sleepover or my high school prom, my butt was in the pew the next Sunday morning. So I've been in some church. And that's the reason I'm here today, is I grew up as a Christian and still profess the faith today as an adult. I'm also here singing for you. I have my master's in classical music and spent the past 4 years at the Washington National Cathedral singing as a professional countertenor, which for those of you new to the voice type, it is a male alto or male soprano. So I hope I correctly demonstrated that today. Thank you. But the reason I'm here in Seattle right now and here in First Baptist with y'all is a little bit longer story. When I was 19, my father passed away from esophageal cancer. And for a good Protestant who had started saving for my retirement in high school, assuming that I and everyone I knew would live till their 80s or 90s, it completely shook my world. And for a 19-year-old who hadn't experienced death yet, I didn't really know what to do. And so my dad always said that if he hadn't been a pastor, he probably would have been a trucker. And that's because he loved driving so much. We did family road trips as a kid. And so soon after he passed, I got in his car, smelling of his pipe and his sunflower seeds, and with his atlas on the seat next to me, and I took a road trip. And it was such a healing experience for me, a way to grieve and to process death, that I took another road trip the next year, and the next year after that. And every year since age 19, I've done one road trip to honor both him and the love he had for driving and the road, but also this lesson that I learned and that was confirmed as I did those road trips and met people much older and wiser than I was. That lesson confirmed for me was that life is not infinite, at least here on earth, and tomorrow's not guaranteed, and having time with all the people we think we'll have is not guaranteed, so we should appreciate it while we have it. And that was a lesson that many of my peers I found did not know. We all thought we were invincible. And so throughout my 20s, I thought, maybe there's something I can do to share this message I learned the hard way so other people don't have to learn it the same way. And I made it a goal that when I turned 30, I would do something crazy to share that idea. And it's crazy because about 14 months ago, I took all of my life and I moved it into a white windowless cargo van down by the river and set forth on a goal, a 3-year road trip to become the youngest person to visit all 417 U.S. National Park Service sites, so that I could do something that would help me share this message with people who might not hear about it otherwise. And that's what brings me to Seattle. I'm 188 parks done, with about 220 some to go. And I've been fortunate in that because of the world record of being the youngest person, the media has come along, and I've done about 350 interviews in the past year, everything from Nebraska to New Zealand. And it's allowed me to share this message that I was hoping to, about appreciating time and people while we have it. But something else happened on this journey for me as well. And once again, that goes back to when I was 19. That year was a big one for me because it was the first time that I met an adult who was openly gay. Growing up in Nebraska as a pastor's kid, my exposure to gay people was what I saw on TV, which taught me that all gay people were either drag queens or wore Speedos in floats on parades. And that was it. And one thing I knew for sure that I also learned was that all gay people were going to hell. And my church didn't do anything to change that perspective. In fact, gay was such a taboo topic that we didn't even talk about it. So I knew it was bad because it couldn't even be spoken about. And so after meeting more gay people in my 20s and starting to have some of those stereotypes shattered, my mind frame started to shift a little bit too about my faith. I knew I was a Christian. I'd grown up in the church, and I felt that for sure as possible. But everyone told me that you could not be Christian and gay. You had to choose one or the other. And when I finally came to a place of acceptance about my sexual orientation as a gay man, I thought, well, I don't want to get rid of this Christian thing. This is who I am. And so I struggled once again to find someone who was like me. Everywhere I drove on these road trips, I would look for other gay Christians, and I couldn't find them. I started to find some, and they were at affirming churches here and there, and usually they were in their 50s or 60s or 70s, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being in your 50s, 60s, and 70s. Let me say that first. But for a 22, 23-year-old who was trying to figure out his place in the world and in the church, I yearned to meet someone my own age who proved to me that what I was going through and what I thought I could be was possible. And so when I moved to Washington, D.C. at 26 to start at the National Cathedral Choirs, I thought, well, if I can't find them, maybe I can bring them to me. So I started a group called Queer for Christ, and now, 4 years later, that group is the world's largest gathering of young adult LGBT Christians. Thank you. But it's not about me. It's about all the people I met on the way. Because it was Washington, D.C., as I'm assuming was Seattle, I met people from Nebraska and Washington State and Texas and China and South Africa and Indonesia, and from Baptist churches, Lutheran churches, Methodist, African Methodist Episcopal, Mormon, all denominations in all places around the world. Everyone told the same story that I just told. They said, I didn't feel wanted by my church growing up, and I certainly didn't feel wanted by my God. And so when this national parks journey happened and the media started coming, I was a little hesitant at first, but I realized quickly, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I had an opportunity and a platform to be that role model that 10-year-old Mikah never had, not only as a gay man, but as a gay Christian. So very early on, I started making sure that every interview I did, every news piece, I not only mentioned I was gay to break the stereotypes so that we don't like the outdoors. And I know you're in Seattle, so I know there's a lot of people up here that like the outdoors. But also making sure to mention I was a gay Christian, and I grew up in the church, and it was still a part of my life. Because I wanted people, no matter where they were reading or seeing this, to know that even if their church didn't accept them, that there was a church somewhere in their city, there was a God that loved them as they were. And so I also made it a goal that every Sunday I would be in a different church. Sometimes I'm in churches like y'all's, and I have to say, first of all, thank you, because you're my first Baptist church, and I have been wanting to visit a Baptist church for a while, and I was so happy. Yes. I was so happy when a friend told me about you, because there aren't as many Baptist churches around that are as awesomely accepting as you are, so pat on the back to you. But in places like this, it allows me to share with the gay community that there are churches that care about them as they are and love them as they are, and there is a God that loves them, no matter what their background was, no matter where they came to Seattle from, or wherever, and what they were told as kids, that there is a God that loves them. And then in some churches I go to, the pastor says, you're going to be the first gay person that's talked at this church. So when we decide if we're going to do gay weddings, they're going to think of you. No pressure. And so one of the ways I'm keeping this journey going is that I'm singing for my supper at churches all around the country. And so after the service, I'll be out here shaking hands and down in the fellowship hall, and I'll have a little box with me. So if it's on your heart to help keep gas in the tank and get to the next church, I'll certainly appreciate that. But even if you just want to come along the journey with me, I've got little cards that you can follow along online and see all of America from the smartphone in your palm. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you for having me today, for being here and being a witness to the gospel, because there's a lot of gospel I think, in what I'm doing. You know, I had to bring in Jesus. I couldn't just talk about me. It's God time, so buckle in. You know, people look at me and they say I don't exist. They say, you can't be a gay, Christian, outdoorsy, male soprano living in a van. They say that's not how the world works. But when I look at the Bible and I look at the Jesus that I learned about growing up, that's not what I see. Because Jesus came to the woman at the well, and he didn't say, you know what, I've heard of your labels. I know what you've done. I can't talk to you because somebody might see that I'm talking to you. He didn't go to the blind man or the leper and say, you must be a horrible person because God inflicted you with this disease, so I don't want to be near you or I might catch it. And even on the cross, while he was being crucified, he looked next to him and did not see a criminal, but saw a child of God. And so if it's one message that I hope my labels help people look beyond, it's that when God looks at us, he sees something different. As humans, we look at each other and we look at labels. And I'm no holier than anyone else. I do it too. I'm guilty of that. But I try to live as Jesus taught us and look at every human as God looks at us, first as a child of God, and not by our earthly labels. So my challenge for all of us, myself included, is that as we go out these doors and go out of God's house into the world, that no matter who we encounter, whether they're an immigrant or disabled or a bully or even our neighbor who plays the music too loud, that we remember that everyone we interact with is first and foremost a child of God, deserving of God's love that we show them through our example, through Jesus' example. So I've got one more song for you today as we prepare to commune together, to share this meal together. And it's in German, so I'm going to give you a little quick translation. But basically, it's God have mercy. God have mercy on us when we forget to live as Jesus taught us, when we forget to bring heaven down to earth and focus only on the heaven to come. But most of all, God have mercy. God have mercy on us all, no matter who we are, forgiven children of God, redeemed through Christ, so that we may be with God no matter who we are. Amen.